What's up, Novocaine here. Today I'm going to show you how to make this desert environment in Blender. It's fairly simple for the most part. Most of it is just having layers of foliage and adding additional details, so if you follow along you shouldn't have any problems. So whenever I'm making an environment scene, I like to make a cube and I like to resize it to the shape of a human so I have a size reference. So this is the average human size, 1.8 meters. And I'm just going to move this on top of the grid like that. So let's go ahead and add a plane. And let's make it 20 by 20 meters. This does not have to be 20. You can do whatever value you want. Let's go from the front view and make a camera. And just move it back on the y-axis. Move it up a little bit. Check the angle. I'm going to go for a pretty low angle. Something like that. So go ahead and select your plane. Go into edit mode. Right click. Subdivide. And do 100 subdivisions. Then make sure you are in vertex selection mode and make sure that proportional editing is enabled. And select any of these verts in the back here and just move them up with G and Z just very slightly. And play around with the scroll wheel until you get the desired area that you want. Because as we know, nothing in the earth is truly flat. So, you just want to adjust these just a little bit. Not too much though. And make sure you're locking them on the Z-axis. I'm gonna move this up just a little bit, maybe scroll it up, scroll this down, something like that. Now if we look at it from the side, we can see that it's not, boring and completely flat. So while we're at it, let's make our environment. So go to your world tab and in the color selection, select sky texture. Let's go into cycles view here. First of all, it's too strong, so we're gonna take the strength to 0.25. And I want the sun to come from the left. So I'm going to change the rotation to about 240. And I'm going to increase the elevation to make the shadows a little bit shorter, so about 30 degrees. So for the foreground, we need to get a nice rocky sand texture and some foliage. I'm going to go for some dead shrubs, at least one other additional plant type for now, and some small rocks. Now, if you know where to get good quality stuff like this to use for a desert scene, or if you're incredibly based and can just make this stuff on your own, skip to this time here. However, for everyone else, don't worry, I'm going to be using Quixel, which is a free material and asset library, and it's pretty good. I'm not going to show you how to set up Quixel in the Blender plugin for importing assets, but there's a quick YouTube tutorial in the description that'll get you started, and once you get to 555, just come back and I'll show you how I do my importing. Now, Quixel is great, but there is a kicker. They haven't updated the Blender plugin in forever, so all the textures are either messed up or completely missing, depending on what Blender version you're using, if you import them from the Quixel app. So we're just gonna have to do this manually. So let's start with our ground texture. I'm gonna go for the Canyon Rocky Ground under Rock Rough, and I downloaded this in the 4K resolution. However, do not press the export button. I'm gonna show you a way better way to do this. So click on these three dots here, go to files, and just copy this directory. And go to Blender, go to shading, click new on whatever you want to texture. Make sure you have Node Wrangler enabled under add-ons right here, Node Wrangler, and then press Control-Shift-T on your principled BSDF. Just paste that, and then we're gonna select our albedo, roughness, specular, displacement, and normal, and then just principal texture setup, and you should get a texture in there. So as you can see, it's too big, so we're gonna have to go into our UV editing tab and just select everything in edit mode. Let me disable our overlays so we can see what we're doing. Select everything in the UV panel and just scale up a lot. I mean, like really a lot. Kind of something like this. Don't even worry about the tiling that's going on here. By the time we add displacement and all the foliage, it will be barely noticeable. So go into your material settings here and scroll down all the way down to settings and set the displacement from bump only to displacement and bump in shade auto smooth. Doesn't quite look like what we need yet. Don't worry. If this hasn't happened for you, you are probably on a Blender version that is below 4.0, so you need to switch from supported to experimental in the render settings. So with the plane selected, let's go down to the displacement node And let's lower the scale to 0.5, maybe 0.25. You can see what it's doing. So this is up to you. I think I'm gonna go for something like 0.35. I'm also going to make it look more sandy. So I'm gonna add a hue saturation value node in between my base color and my principal BSDF node. I'm gonna increase the hue by just a slight bit, drop the saturation, and up the value a little bit so it looks more sandy. So open up Quixel. I found some dead shrubs here. I think there's a couple more, but I think this is the best one that they have on here. I downloaded this in 2K. I think 4K is a little bit overkill unless you're maybe doing some close-ups. So go ahead and press export. It should say export to Blender and export it successfully. So let's go back to Blender, and the first thing you see is these white weird objects. So let's fix this. You select any of these objects, any random one, and you move them out. Then select them, delete their material, and add a new one, call it dead shrubs or whatever asset you are texturing. Go back into Quixel and do the same thing where you go to files, copy the directory. Control-Shift-T on the principal BSDF, paste it, then go into textures, Atlas, and here you can select all the textures that you want. We're gonna need albedo, which is our base color, specular, roughness, and opacity. All the other ones, I think, yet again, they're overkill. So let's just set this up. And as you can see, now you have a properly textured dead shrub. As for the other ones, basically what you do, let me just hide this plane here for a second. You select all of the ones that don't have a texture, then shift click on the one that has a texture, and then press Control L, link materials. And now all of them have textures. So let's move this one back into the clump, select all of them, press M, and add them to a collection, dead shrubs. While we're at it, I'm gonna do the same exact thing for this other plant asset, yellow rabbit brush. You can play around with different plants that they have on here. Something might look better, something might not fit at all, so just trial and error. But it's the same exact process as the dead shrubs. You export, it's gonna bring it in, drag it out, delete material, yellow rabbit brush, yada, yada, yada. And the last thing I'm gonna add for now is a small rock. We're gonna use these as pebbles to scatter across the ground floor to break up some of the texture. So go ahead and press export on that as well. Again, same exact process. Copy, delete, rock, Control-Shift-T, paste. For this one, you wanna do albedo, roughness, specular. We can do a low level of detail, normal map. Let's do level of detail 6, and that's everything. Let me actually add 2 more small rocks from Quixel so we're not scattering the same exact rock on the ground. And here's my 3 rocks. I'm just gonna select all of them, press M to add them to a new collection, rocks, done. So now that you have these things in their respective collections, you can just move everything off to the side and hide them so they don't show up in your camera. Let's get to scattering. So let me switch to layout, cycles, select our plane, go to our particle systems, and let's make a new particle system. Let's do the dead shrubs first. So just call it dead shrubs, call this dead shrubs as well. Change it to hair, advanced, rotation, enable rotation, set render as collection, and enable the instance collection as dead shrubs. These are going to be the smaller dead shrubs closer to the camera. So I'm going to make them a little bigger, but not too big. And I'm going to enable scale randomness, set that to 1. And also rotation, randomize, you can set that to 1. Now we are going to optimize this a little bit. So drop the number down to 100. And we're going to set our children to interpolated and make sure these 2 numbers always stay the same. And I'm going to set this to 10. So basically this is multiplying this 100 by 10. So we're getting 1,000 anyway. So let's go into our weight paint mode because we want them to be in the front rather than the back. So pretty easy. Let's just go to our top view here, increase our radius to something like 201. And let me just go into this view here. And we're just gonna draw in something like a half circle in front of our camera. And as you can see, nothing has changed quite yet. That's because we haven't set our vertex map quite yet. So go to your particle system, vertex groups down here, density, and select group. And now they're all here. Now's the perfect time if you want to increase the amount of children, or if you want a different seed, or if you want to make them bigger or smaller, but I'm going to leave everything as is. All right, let's add the bigger dead shrubs. So just press this plus icon, go down here, select dead shrubs again, and we're going to press this button to make this particle system unique. So now whatever settings we change here, they won't change in this particle system. So let's call this dead shrubs big. Call this that here as well. Can't type. Okay. Collection's the same. Everything here has been kept as it was in the last particle system. The only thing that didn't save is the vertex group. So you select the group again, but you're going to click this button, and that's going to invert our weight map. So all of them, if I scale these up, are now here. Now, if they're skewed for you like they are for me, I don't know why this happened, to be honest, but all you have to do is go into rotation and change the orientation axis to global Z, and they should be straight like that now. So I'm going to increase the amount a little bit here. So go to children, make sure you select both of them, and then only make the change, because whatever you put here won't be the same as your render amount if you only change one. And I'm also just going to play around with the seed here until I get something that I like. So after what felt like 2 or 3 minutes playing roulette with the seed slider, finally got a result that I like. But you can see there's some black areas that shouldn't be there in some of these areas. So that's a pretty easy fix. All you have to do is go into light paths and increase the transparency light paths. So by default, Blender sets it to 8. I like to put it at 12. And as you can see, there's a massive change. They're much easier to see through, but be warned, the higher this is set to, the longer your render will take. And I actually like very small amounts of the black thing going on there. I don't know, maybe I'm weird. Anyway, let's add our yellow rabbit brush. So same thing, press the plus, press here, dead shrubs big. We're gonna press this button to copy it, call this yellow rabbit brush. We're gonna name it here as well. And let's change the collection to the appropriate one. And let's change the density to this, flip it, and there you should have some yellow rabbit brush. We're gonna make this smaller. Before we go on, I'm gonna desaturate these a little bit. So if you wanna make any color changes to any of these particles, select any of them in the outliner. View selected should work, maybe not. There we go, I have to enable them. I'm gonna add a HSV node, and I'm just gonna drop the saturation by about 0.3. All right, let's do our rocks. Same thing. Plus, the most similar thing is our small dead shrubs. Copy, call this rocks. Rocks. Set our collection to rocks. Let's enable the size so I can see where they are and how they look. So again, I had to change the rotation orientation axis to global Z, otherwise they were clipping through the ground. Maybe that's even better, I don't know. And I think I'm actually going to desaturate the orange one and the darker looking one as well in a second. So I quickly rendered this out to take a look at it. I think for the most part, I'm satisfied with how the particles are spread around. The rocks, I'm kind of indifferent about the rocks, but I think I'm gonna let them stay. And yeah, we're gonna add some more details now to our foreground just to make it look more believable. And then we're gonna work on the background. So I'm back on Quixel, and I think I have some assets that I wanna use. I wanna use these cacti, and I wanna use these desert rocks that we can blend in the ground somewhere. I'm not gonna do the whole importing texture procedure. I'm sure you've got the hang of it by now, so I'll just jump to when I have those in my scene. Okay, so I lied. I got a couple other things. So this rock, these rocks are from Bridge. This patch of grass is from the Botanic add-on. These two cacti are from Quixel. This one's from Botanic, and this boulder is from Bridge as well. Quixel, Bridge. So this is the fun part. I'm going to switch to material preview so it doesn't lag as much. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to drag it onto our plane, go to our camera view. Oh, actually, maybe no. Maybe we have to do this in cycles because we can't see through them. So let's just move this down into the ground. I see an empty patch here where it could fit. And if I want to add more rocks, I can just select it and press Alt-D to instance it. So this will pretty much use this same object. We're not Shift-D'ing it. We're not duplicating it. We're instancing it. So it causes, it doesn't cause any change in our performance. You can also instance something and then scale it by X-1 to flip it around horizontally, which could give it the illusion that it's not the same object if it's more visible, but in this case it's barely visible, so who cares? Now these patches of grass, I just wanted to add these to places that felt like they were lacking grass a little bit, felt too, too open. I can actually do this in material preview mode. So they're under the ground, I believe, currently, or not. I don't know. Hard to tell. And I'm just going to instance these around the scene. Maybe scale them down on the Z-axis. Add another one like here. Scale it up. Scale it down on the Z-axis. I don't know. Just play around. See what works. Go back into cycles. Let's see if none of this looks off. Looks fine to me. I'm just going to make this one a little bit bigger and closer to the scene like that. These cacti, I'm just gonna place some more to the edges of the scene behind everything else because they're not too important to the scene. They're just adding a little bit of detail or environment building. That's a pretty big cactus. Let me scale that down. And what you can also do is you can instance them way out back, drag them down, scale them down, and this could give the illusion that this field goes on for way longer than it actually does, but you have to tweak it well enough to the point where it looks believable. This tree I'm placing right here. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, maybe on the left of the scene, around like here. If I disable all my particles, you can see that there's a line here, the horizon of the plane, that's sort of going through our dead shrubs. So I just want to hide that with a very tactically placed yet innocent boulder. So I'd say that's our foreground done. The last thing I'm going to add is a mountain in the back. There's a couple ways to do this depending on how much time you want to spend on it. Personally, the fastest way and the best results way would probably to just use this asset, the gigantic sandstone terrain, or any other mountain assets you can find on Quixel or anywhere online. And yeah, I just imported them, did all the texture business. I placed this down first, and then I instanced this other one and rotated it around so that it looks like a different mountain. You could also use the free ANT landscape add-on. Every Blender user has this. Just go to landscape and enable this one. I go to mesh, landscape. It's kind of small at first, but you open this up, go to the mountain preset, and then if you increase the mesh size X to like 6, it's going to give you like a wide mountain. Increase the subdivisions as well so it's not low poly. You can tweak around any of these settings, see what they do, and get your perfect mountain. And yeah, then just same process, just scale it up. But this time you have to texture it. There's a ton of texturing mountains tutorials on YouTube. So if you want a really customized result, you could go for that. What you could also do is you could find a picture on the internet of some desert mountains, kind of like I did here, and just import it with the images as planes add-on, position it in the background of your scene, and that could work. I don't think I have the perfect picture for this, but if you dig around, I'm sure you could find something that could fit. And this would also drastically improve your render times instead of having a real mountain there. Another thing that I think helps this scene quite a bit is adding a fog cube over your mountains or whatever you did. And that just helps it separate the background from the foreground, kind of like this. It makes the mountains more desaturated like they would in real life. I'm pretty sure there was a phenomenon or something about this in real life. And this is also a very simple thing to do. I already did it, but what you do is you make a big cube, you go into your shader editor, you delete the material that it has. Let me just redo it. Delete the principled BSDF, do a principled volume instead, drag the volume into the volume, and for the density, just do 0.001. And that's going to give you a very light fog for the background. You could increase the value, but I think 0.002 might be a little too much. Can't really tell. You can play around with this. You could even maybe play around with the colors, but I do think this helps separate the foreground and the background. So anyways, that's it. Here's the initial result that we just made, and here's a result that I spent double the time on, paying attention more to composition and where I'm placing my stuff. You can see how important taking time is with those aspects of the shot and just going back, tweaking things, trying out different camera angles. I also added these big rocks in the foreground, and I'd say it looks a lot better. I hope you learned something new. I hope you make some cool environments. Hit the like button if you liked it, and yeah, man, peace out.